Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands of Treaty 6 nations, including the Blackfoot, Cree, Dene, Gros Ventre, Métis, Nakota Sioux, and Saulteaux. Welcome to Strathcona County Art Gallery at 501 and our first virtual artist talk. My name is Chris Miller. I'm the gallery coordinator, and I'm pleased to be joined by exhibiting artists Leah Dorian and Gary Sutton as we discuss their artwork in the virtual exhibition Walking Gently, Spirit Stories and the 13 Moons. As we celebrate our gallery's 10-year anniversary, we are pleased to have started our exhibition lineup for this year with the work of these two talented artists. Over the last decade, Gallery at 501 has hosted thousands of visitors to over 60 exhibitions and countless art classes, school and group programs, and special members events. Today, we are pleased to introduce our current exhibiting artists, Leah Dorian and Gary Sutton. Thank you both for being here today. We'll start with Leah Dorian, who is from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. Leah is a teacher, painter, filmmaker, and writer. She shares ancestral stories of Indigenous 13 Moon teachings through decorative, symbolic paintings of traditional ceremonies and lunar cycles. Welcome, Leah.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. Chris, thank you for the opportunity to
I'm really looking forward to sharing and telling everyone about my work and answering some of those questions that your community members have for me. So thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Leah. So tell us a little bit about this particular body of work and what inspired you to create it.
Well, this body of work is from a larger exhibition dedicated to the 13 moons. And for me, the moon is so inspiring. And I was so very fortunate to get a grant from the Saskatchewan Arts Board several years ago to facilitate the work to create the original art. And I worked with my Auntie Elsie Sanderson, who's a community elder. She's a family elder. She's a Chapan, a great grandparent, and she keeps teachings around the moon and the moon teachings. And so she worked with me to guide me in the artistic development of these paintings. And these paintings are several that are from the larger work, and they have been guided through an eldership mentorship process with elders' teachings embedded in the designs and the concepts, and they're filtered through my Métis worldview lens. So I go through, my process of art making, and it seems like everything gets woven through my Métis cultural design elements: bright colors, beadwork, repeating patterns, symbolism. They're all a part of this show. And I think Gary and I make a good match because he is also color fearless. He has repeating patterns. And it's funny, we're both Métis, but we express our Métis stories very differently. And I see my work to be very feminine, flowing. The moon teachings are about flowing with natural law cycles as women. So my work has cyclical feel. So the body of work is really a tribute to the sacred feminine connection to the moon, and it's filtered through the teachings of Indigenous women. And of course, I, being Métis, have learned to absorb those teachings because the First Nations were our grandmothers who gave us the roots to Turtle Island. And I really honor those First Nations, relations who gave us this teaching knowledge to make our lives better and more fulfilling. So there's the backstory behind the show, in the work in the show.
And we've paired Leah's artwork in this exhibit with the work of Gary Sutton, who is from Redwood Meadows, Alberta. Gary is inspired by the Professional Native Indian Artists Incorporation, otherwise known as the Indian Group of Seven, and paints in the woodland style, also known as legend or medicine painting. So welcome, Gary. Can you tell us a little bit about your artwork in this exhibition and what inspired you to create it?
I guess what inspired me to create this body of work is, I guess over probably the last 5-6 years, I guess this body of work represents different conversations with people I've met and people have approached me to do artwork for them. These pieces represent the relationships in their lives and them and their spirits and the spirits of people in their lives. Yeah, about it.
Absolutely, that's great. And Gary, you've got quite an interesting process in your work when you approach it, in that you have clients approach you who want to have an expressive sort of a portrait done, something that's really meaningful to them about themselves or their families. Can you tell us just a little bit about that process of how things come to be? Right now we see a piece right behind you there, the Michaels, and the story there is really beautiful. Can you describe how that works?
Well, I'm very fortunate to have quite a backlog of commissioned works. Even right now, probably into next year. And so people usually approach me, and then we kind of go through a bit of a process. I have a document that I prepare and that asks questions and helps flush out different subject matter. And so we go back and forth with that document and have phone calls and until I get to a point where I'm satisfied with, I have enough information to do up an initial draft of a painting. And so typically I'll do that. It'll take a couple months usually, and then I'll present the sketch to the client and we'll talk about it. And more often than not, first shot is a go, and I'll take the sketch and I'll put it on canvas, and usually it's up to me to decide on the color palette. And so I usually choose a color palette depending on the feel I get from my clients and the subject matter.
That's perfect. And Leah had shared with us a little bit already about some of the symbolism, the colors, the patterns, and sort of the ideas behind what's in her artwork in that realm. Can you tell us, once you've gone through that process with your clients, you've asked some questions, you've got a little bit of info about their personalities and their character, what do you choose out of that? How do you decide in terms of picking animals and symbols to reflect those stories that you just heard?
I usually sift through, I guess, parts of their story that I think are really impactful, or whether to me or to them. And I'll choose an animal that goes with that scenario. Often people have an idea of their own spirit animal. A lot of people intuitively know this, I find, talking to so many different people. And so I'll take those ideas and either make the animal the major portion of the piece, or a minor, or I'll put a number of different animals depending on the different characteristics that the people have brought forth.
Perfect. And that really seems to come together in such an amazing, powerful way in your artwork. The way you compose your pieces, you've got animals reflecting the different family members. You've chosen very purposeful colors and patterns to really complement those stories, and that's really evident in your work. Now, Gary, Leah was telling us a little bit about her connections to Métis culture, how she expresses and connects with that through her artwork. For you, it's a little bit of a different story and a connection. Can you describe for us how you came to even connect with your Métis roots, and maybe share a little bit about that side of your artistic practice?
I guess I found out, I guess my mother got her Métis card when I was 28 years old. And I don't know, I wasn't too surprised. For some reason, I've always felt deep down a connection to First People. And even as a young person, I explored that a little bit. And when I did get my card eventually, I explored different parts of it and talked to different people, different elders. But for me, it's an ongoing learning process. And even talking with Leah, I've learned so much. And she has a podcast, actually. People should check that out, with National Geographic. It's amazing. There's so much to learn. We were talking earlier before the show. Canada's got such an amazing history, and an unwritten history too. It's just really interesting. So I have future plans of exploring that more in my work, and do different series. But for now, I'll mainly be focusing on talking with people and putting their ideas and their spirits into paintings.
Perfect. And you do that so beautifully too, Gary. We're really grateful to have your work as part of this exhibition. Thank you for sharing that. So sort of a question that came to my mind. There's so much going on in the world right now. Obviously, all of us are going through some challenging times. There's sort of a case for the arts now more than ever. And it's so important that we find ways to look after ourselves, support each other, even support mental health through the visual arts, and just going back to expressing what we're going through. So I'm going to jump over to Leah now. Leah, as an artist working in 2021, what do you feel is particularly important to share with the world right now through your artwork?
Well, it's just so
wonderful being an artist, and especially during the current reality. And with my work in this show being so natural law oriented and nature based and moon cycle based, the moon is over us every evening. We don't need anybody to observe her but ourselves. And I think what the beauty of being this moment is, we have to learn how to connect with greater things to move through our own confusion, frustration, and loneliness. And every night, Grandmother Moon, Nokom Tipskau Pism, she goes through the sky, and she's cycling, and she's strong, and she's been there for eons, and she's going to continue to be there as long as Mother Earth needs her love and support, and us as well. And there is a spiritual story in this work that when you feel like you're lost connection, you don't know who you are, your spirit needs fulfillment, look up to her wonder. It will carry you through difficult times, through uncertainty. And I think that message is just so embedded in the stories of my artwork in this show. And I think we need that natural connection to greater creation to carry us through, because it's really difficult right now for people emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And so I think right now this show, the world needs this show. And having it online, how wonderful. The fact that we're still able to adapt our galleries and our artistic practice to stream, and may not be perfect, but we're doing the best we can. And I think that says something about, the world needs art and will always need it. And so we have to do it a little differently. We'll do it. And I'm glad, thank you to the gallery for taking upon this opportunity, because I didn't realize how much work it is to stream, to get things virtually prepared. I've learned so much. So thank you to the gallery.
Thank you as well. We really appreciate both of you participating in this fashion. And it is quite a different experience for us as well. At Gallery at 501 here, we find that our exhibitions, of course, we would love to have our community be able to walk in the door and see all this beautiful work that you've both taken so much time to create. There's amazing drawings as well that Gary has shared with us that are awkwardly lit behind me here. Sorry about that, folks. And but they're gorgeous, so you can see them very clearly on our website, strathcona.ca/walkinggently. You can click onto both of the artists' galleries. You can see just the gorgeous technique that Gary uses in these drawings. They're so expressive. You can really see how he's planning each line, really thinking through those stories before he then decides how he's going to translate that into his painting. So thank you, Gary, for sharing that. Please make sure you folks check those out. And then Leah, for yourself, you've also really inspired us by sharing some poetry banners as well in this exhibition. And I think that's really important that when we think of art is all around us, and there are so many ways that we're all telling our stories and sharing with our community. So through poetry is quite beautiful. So having these banners has really added an extra beautiful piece for this exhibition. So thank you so much. Again, those can be seen online as well. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you connect to and express your Métis culture in your art practice, and how storytelling and symbolism play a role in your work?
Thank you.
I just learned from listening to Gary before he had technical difficulties. We both love the woodland art style, and Norval Morrisseau is probably one of my favorite color artists, Indigenous color artist. Anishinaabe work in color is phenomenal. And as a Métis artist, we also have a love of color. And I think it's, for me, the beadwork, the floral beadwork, the beautiful color combinations that we stitched on our clothing, on our moccasins, on our hide jackets. And the women of days past, and still to this day, combine these bright colors of beads, and that beadwork just becomes a focal point for the clothing, and it's like wearable art. So when people look at my artwork, I think they see the influence of Métis floral beadwork and Métis beading color combinations, which can be very unusual, because I've watched elders from the north in Saskatchewan who didn't have access to beads and colors regularly. When they sold out at the store, the one store, they sold out. And so they had to be really creative and trade weird colors. So you get these neat interpretations of color that may seem quite unusual, but they were practical choices the women had to make. I know that for me, when I pull my color combinations, they can tend to look a little bit unusual, but I think I'm honoring that tradition of use what you've got, be bold, vibrant, and I think the floral patterns, I really like the curvy linear Métis beadwork. We're known for our curvy floral beadwork patterns versus geometric, harsh repeating patterns. So that's, my work is very flowing, and that's one of my source inspirations is Métis historical floral beadwork pattern.
How long did it take to create the artwork that's behind you? And when we flip cameras, we'll have a little bit of a peek at that piece. What is the symbolism of the dragonflies? And can you tell us a bit more about that story about the piece?
Well, the artwork,
there's still paintings I'm working on in the greater show. I had like 8 sketches, and I'm still finishing up paintings. You know, I started them about 2 to 3 years ago, and I could never create this whole show of 28, and there were actually more like 30 some sketches. So I'm hoping eventually to complete all of them, but I would like to really get the full 28 done in the next year. You know, I'm getting there, but it's going to take, for the grander plan, the whole show will be fully birthed, you know, when it's meant to be. But I've been so grateful that small community galleries can host the show and pick and choose from the existing work as it comes forth and make it work for the gallery space that works for each gallery. So I didn't want to hold back the show, and one day it'll be ready for full viewing in a large gallery space. As far as symbols, I have many, many, many symbols. The dragonflies to me are our ancestors, and the moon is like, she reminds us of our ancestors, the women who went before us, the life givers, our ancestors, you know, those who walked before in this journey. So the dragonflies are to me connecting the ancestors and connecting us to our ancestors. I have a lot of lunar moths, because people who watch moths know that they come out at the night, they move in the dark, but they are attracted to the light, that hue of light. So when you flip a nightlight on, those moths come to it. And I felt the lunar moth would be, and moths would be, a beautiful addition of honoring a creature who really navigates under the moonlight. And they have so many teachings, of mysterious teachings that really relate, you know, to women's mysterious ways of turning life and giving life and conduiting life. So those are, hopefully that answers some of those questions about time requirements, symbolism, and whatnot. Hope I haven't missed anything.
Great, thank you so much. And Gary, I'm wondering too, if you'd be comfortable even sharing a little bit about the story that's behind you there, if you don't mind. We can see the painting called The Michaels, and I think it might be interesting for folks just to hear a little bit about that story and how it came to be.
Okay, so this is, can I lean over like this and look at it? This is about the Michael family. Can you hear me okay on the mics? Good. So this is actually like a protection piece to hang, and helps protect the family. And that's a lot of these paintings in my show are painted with that in mind. So this is a pack of wolves, which is their family. And wolves tend to be really protective of their families. You can see the father's aura and the mother's aura coming together to show that they're one cohesive unit, but they're separate enough that they are individuals. And they have two sons. You can see one son, his foot's touching his father's foot. Someday he wants to be like his father. And in his head is kind of has a question mark there. And, children are so full of questions and exploring life, and that's something their parents will help them through in life. There's a kind of a stylized heart chakra in the wing of the wolf, the father wolf, and I guess that's kind of an archangel Michael symbol. There's a symbol inside the father wolf as well. There's two figures kind of helping each other up and picking each other up, and that's kind of a major theme in their Michael's relationship is, having each other's back and helping each other through life and whatnot. And there's a ladybug in the mother's belly, and that kind of symbolizes old traditional, ways of raising a family and viewpoints and whatnot. And there's a shared color scheme between everybody in the family. The ribs in the father are the same color as the mother to show that he understands his feminine side. Yeah, kind of goes on and on from there.
Thank you. No, I think that's really interesting though, because whenever we look at artwork, it's obviously so subjective and very personal. And when you walk into a gallery and you see a beautiful piece like this, it's nice to experience it first on your own and see what you can connect to and relate to, what you feel about the colors, the subject matter, the whole design of it. And then to hear the artist talk about his story for the work is just really powerful. So I really appreciate you sharing that today. Thank you. We do have another question as well for Leah. And so Leah, right here, one of our attendees says, I was so impressed by the paintings you did for the Indigenous Canada course. It seems that you translate the ideas and inspirations of others while maintaining your own voice. How do you balance the two?
Oh, I love that question. And it's
nice to hear Gary talk about commissioned work, because those artworks for the University of Alberta were commissioned. So I had to listen. What story do you want to tell, Indigenous Studies Department? What are the themes? And I worked with Dr. Tracy Bear, and she was so descriptive. Then they had the trust, and I work much like Gary, just actually kind of hearing him talk about his process for commission work. I'm very much the same, and I let my intuition, and I try to find the thread of passion, and where that person seems fired up, I listen deeper and really try to come up with imagery when I hear that lift in their voice and see that fire in their eyes, and I try to get it visually. And I make no apologies for filtering it through my style. And I always tell people, I am who I am. If you want something else, you have to go to those artists with that style. You're going to get a real pattern bright Leah Dorion. So be prepared. That's what I say. And what is interesting when I listened to Gary speak as well earlier about his process, I actually played University of Saskatchewan women's volleyball at a very high level for a few years, and I got critically injured, like really injured. And I think it was a gift. At the time, it was devastating, but my body was no longer able to distract me, and I had to start developing other aspects of me. And I can't, even to this day, my knees and my lower back, I just have pain. And I find that making art is a nice way of walking through that discomfort and those old injuries. And so to me, also having a child, birthing my child and giving life to my son and having that motherhood experience has really invigorated my art, because it really made me feel that I wanted to share the feminine visuals. I felt that there needed to be a Indigenous feminine voice in my work, and that's what my goal is to filter it through my style of art. And I hope people find inspiration, because I think we all have a voice and we all have a form of art. And I found mine, and I hope others find theirs, because I just love seeing people express themselves. To me, it elevates us all. Thank you for that question.
So Gary, how do you make space in your busy life for your artwork? How do you get into that spiritual place that allows you to let the subjects just flow in your art?
Well, time is pretty precious around our house, I think. So what I do is I usually get up at 4 or 5, and I'll either draw or paint before I start work. I'm a working days. I work from 7 to 5:30. Then usually pretty tired out. So after that, I spend time with the kids. So I do most of my painting early in the morning. I'm lucky enough to work a 2-week on, 2-week off shift. So on my 2 weeks off, I'll obviously paint a lot more. So that's how I split up my time, basically.
Yeah, Gary, you were just talking about the time, making time and whatnot for your art. And the second part of that too, that question was how you really get back into that sort of spiritual place that allows you to let your subjects flow into your art. Is there anything that you do as an artist? Do you have a certain ritual? Is there something in your studio you take time to do, or what works for you?
So I think Leah talked about it as well. As it's kind of you just follow your intuition, and I'm pretty, for the most part, I'm kind of tuned into that. I think my wife really helps with that idea as well. She's a Reiki master. It's really tuned into the different energies of the universe and the moon. Hear quite a bit about the moon in my house. At one point I was going to start smudging my canvases before I painted, and I may end up getting back to that, but I never went down that road, I guess. But as far as, I think I started to talk about this before my mic cut out, I switched over to doing digital sketches, and that has really sped up being able to get ideas out, get the color out, and come up with color schemes and that. So I don't know if you've done that, Leah, but you should try it out. It's, I find it very, very helpful for sure.
That's really interesting. And we'll come back over to Leah. And is there anything in your art practice that you found has really evolved over this time? Your 13 Moon series you've had for a bit. You've got some beautiful complementary pieces in this exhibition that have really pushed those same themes. Is there anything either digital wise or other that you use to explore further in your work?
Well, I'm
installation artist also, and I like to use the earth and natural materials and make earth-based installations. I've done willow labyrinth paths, giant rock turtles, and here in Edmonton I actually had a huge turtle labyrinth up for years. I think they were dismantling it because they were doing some changes at the riverbank, but I think I'm actually getting more away from digital and more onto the land and making art on the land. I've also made the lobstick here at Fort Edmonton with my Métis lobstick making team. Lobsticks were the traditional fur trade signs, river highway signs, culturally modified trees. The Métis would modify them, decorate them, tell stories with them. So I think my art practice is getting even more earth-based as I get older, and I'm glad, because I'm spending way more time on the computer than I want to. So I don't think I'm going to go more digital, but I have to learn, because I do need that balance, because I do want to reach the younger audience and meet them where they're at. But I'm still a big fan. Let's get on the land and let's make art with natural materials.
Well, and that's a really nice way to connect as well with both of you. You've both explored so many of your own passions, your Métis culture, and you have embraced both more the spiritual side, things connected to the land, and you're also exploring some in the digital realm and just finding that balance. I think that's really important as an artist to sort of sort out what works best for you. And I think we all go through cycles too, don't we? Of sometimes you definitely feel a little more connected one way or another, and see what works. So I guess what I would ask both of you is to think about what's next. Now, Gary, you alluded a little bit that you've got some things in mind that you might want to work towards. You're pretty booked up for commission moving forward, which is really exciting. Is there anything sort of outside of the commission process that you think you might like to try as well? Anything sort of sitting in that corner waiting for you to to feel that spark?
I've done a lot of thinking, I guess, over the last few years of, I should do this or do that. So one of those ideas is just do a more Métis history focused series. From what I know and from talking to different people. I think that's the next idea, whether that's through replicating ideas of artwork or prominent figures within the Métis community, current or historical, or there's so many different directions a guy can go with that, or person, I guess. And I know for sure I'll be talking to Leah about some of those ideas in the future, for sure.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. And Leah, I'll put the same question your direction too. What's on the books for you moving forward? And how do you see your art practice and your artwork moving next?
Well, I think I'm going to finish
a lot of work. I also have done a lot of sewing textiles, recent partnering with local Métis seamstresses who carry traditional clothing. And I'm actually wearing a shawl. I'm going to do a whole bunch of moon shawls, and I'm actually wearing one with the moon cycle. You remember, this is on the border, the 3 phases of the moon. I'm wearing it today, and I'm actually designing a bunch of moon shawls, and I want to hang them and put them on display in one of my future shows. So I've been working with a bunch of elders in my communities to go with the 13 moons, and I'm working on 13 shawls in textile form that would go in the show. They'd be haunting. I could hang them from willow branches. So I think taking the show to the full extent that I have vision for it is going to be quite a long process, and I'm going to get it done. And then otherwise from that, I think it's just finding people like Gary and other Métis artists and connecting with them, sharing our ideas, and working together in the Métis community. I think we are just coming into our own as Métis, and we want to partner with galleries. We want to show together. And I think there's just room. And I think what you've done is you showed how important it is to connect Métis across this nation and take 2 artists and put them together, because I've learned so much just by partnering and looking at Gary's work. I actually see lots of neat commonalities, like his use of animals is so complementary to my use. Like I have the horse, I have the bison, and we have these neat things going on that if I didn't have this show, I would have never looked at that level of depth at his work. So I just would like to see more mentorship in between Métis and non-Métis as well. Reconciliation through art. That's what I'd love to see as we go forward.
Sort of a and for a lot of us in the arts community and in arts galleries is really keeping that conversation going and making those connections, building those relationships, and just supporting each other. I think it's really important because you can get a lot of inspiration for sure just by connecting with other artists and seeing what other types of work is out there. Absolutely. So I'm just looking at our Q&A. It looks like I don't think we have any more questions. So we will start to wrap up here. There were a few folks just expressing their thanks as well to both Leah and Gary for their work, for being here today. It's wonderful to hear about their work and the process for creating it. So absolutely, we definitely want to express our gratitude to both of you for sharing that today. I just want to say thank you to both of you for coming out to Gallery at 501, for making the big trek back up here today. So wonderful to see you both in person.
Yeah.
It's hard to have humans around, so that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing your artwork, your stories, your passion for the arts with our community and with our online virtual viewers. Thank you, a huge thank you to all of our viewers today who joined us for this artist talk. We hope you were able to feel some deeper connection to the work. So again, thank you everyone. Take care, stay safe, have a good afternoon.